So the question we can have here, how can very experienced player make so many wrong decisions? Well, because what Russian school teaches you, yeah, you have to use your own logic, but you can structure logic several different ways. You have to make sure that your logic follows the ground rules. You follow ground rules using your logic. You don't make 6, 7 moves in early stage of the game with the same piece. Well, there are different aspects of the strategy. Activity of the pieces we already mentioned. And now I'm going to show you one very instructive game played by two representatives of great Russian school between Mikhail Botvinnik and Yefim Geller. Well, even they sometimes fail to activate all their pieces. Well, let's go with the game. d4, knight f6, typical King's Indian that Geller used to play almost every time he had a chance. g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, castle, knight c3, d6, knight f3, knight c6, d5, knight a5, knight d2, c5, queen c2, and a6. Very, very well known position theoretically, and very popular at that time. Game was played in 1952. That was many years ago. After a6, white castled. You have to notice here, white's bishop on g2 is not too active. White's pieces of knight on c3 and knight on d2 kind of cramped. And black has easy way to go b5. But there is one problem in black's position. White deliberately goes for it. Black's knight on a5 is in a very bad position. That knight is not in danger, of course. It's not in the danger of being captured or trapped, but is totally out of play. Bishop f5 was played, e4, and now bishop d7. So the purpose of bishop e5 to make white play a4 and to make bishop on g2 even worse. So b3, b5, bishop b2, b takes c, and here the way we may think in this position. It would be bad mistake for white to play knight takes c4 because black has golden opportunity to exchange the bad knight. Pawn has to be taken back with the pawn, which still black remains with a problem of knight on a5. Rook to b8, knight to d1. Now white wants to put bishop on c3 and knight on e3, improving position. This way knight on a5 will be kind of under attack, and black will need one big piece to protect this knight. After knight to d1, queen c7 and knight e3. I think in this position, at this point, white has significant advantage. Rook b7, bishop c3, rook fb8, h3. It just quite moves. Black has very hard time generating active play. So, well, what can we say here about this position? Black went rook b4. Now black is trying to give up the exchange to make good square for the knight, but white continues to play rook b1, and now after rook takes b1 and rook takes b1 and again rook takes b1 and knight takes b1. Now we see one of the compensations for bad knight black had was the open b file. They don't own this file anymore because all rooks are exchanged. So bad knight on a5 is a real problem. So in this position, black plays queen b6, white goes knight d2 back, and as you see, black has no squares of penetration on the b file, and after knight e8, bishop takes g7, bishops were exchanged, knight takes g7. White has very clear advantage. Well, I was saying on previous DVDs that when you have light square bishop, you have to try put your pawns on dark squares to make this bishop good and make sure the bishop is not bad. Here white has bishop on g2 and almost all central pawns on white squares. But let me refresh your memory what I said about this type of positions. If white's bishop is bad, that doesn't make black's bishop good, because when there are 7 pawns on the board, there's hardly ever good bishop because position is so closed. And also white has potentials of going f4 and e5, so white does have a clearly better position. King h2, knight e8, f4, knight f6. Remember, black plays with knight down. So we see, even if knight goes to b7, it can't go anywhere from b7. And if it goes to d8, that's a dead end also. So knight is absolutely doomed in this game. So after f4 and knight f6, white goes e5, black goes knight e8. It's still not easy for white to make significant progress. So after knight e8, queen c3 was played, improving position of a white queen, f6, e6, bishop a4. Now white's light square bishop is real bad, but white has potential of pushing kingside pawns and creating threats on the king side, because pawn on e6 guarantees them a lot of space on the king side and a lot of freedom of maneuvering. After bishop a4, bishop e4 was played, knight g7, bishop to d3, knight h5, bishop e2, knight to g7, and here white goes for further progress on the king side where they have such a big space advantage. You see, why this game is so instructive. Black has a bad piece and white has a space advantage. So when you make progress here with the white, you have to make sure you never give black any counterplay. After h4, black played knight e8. What is for black to do? If they go queen b4, white can easily play queen c1, and without any progress for black. Black has 3 pieces on queen side, and none of them can make any progress. So knight e8 was played, but after knight e8, white has total freedom to do anything they want. They want bishop d3, and after knight g7, they went f5. Okay, of course, black has to try not to open position. And this game, actually, black never had any any active plan, and they lost in a very few moves. Very, very instructive, and well, this game had a lot of influence on me, so I understood what positional squeezes are. And now it's interesting that a lot of players could do that. At that time in 1950s, it would take maybe like a world-class player like Botvinnik to conduct the squeeze. Now we can see almost in every tournament several games perform that way, because that's what school teaches you. Now let's go to the other game. There is a game that I really like very much, was played between Botvinnik also and Keres. Botvinnik is a father of Russian chess school, had a lot of good strategical ideas put into the game, and now you can see in almost every game some of these ideas are used. So this game against Keres was played also in 1952. Botvinnik is white, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, d5, c takes d, e takes d, bishop g5, bishop e7, and e3. Well, here is a classical position of Queen's Gambit decline. After e3, black castles, bishop d3, knight bd7, queen c2, rook e8, knight ge2, knight f8, white castles, black goes c6, rook a to b1, bishop d6, and here it's interesting to see how game continued. Black has a threat of bishop takes h2. It's very simple tactical shot. King takes, knight g4 check, and then capturing the bishop on g5. Obviously this is easy to prevent. King h1 was played, And I have to point now bishop takes h2 is not working for many reasons. First of all, there is g3. Secondly, simply bishop takes f6 followed by king takes h2. So in this position, after king h1, black played knight g6. But white played f3. Here is the change of plan. Originally, white wanted to play b4 and b5, but right now they are trying to play e4. And the reason for that is that black played bishop d6. Now it's easier to play e4 because the knight on f6 is pinned. After f3, bishop e7 was played back, and now rook b1 to e1. So white is determined to play e4. And once e4 is played, slow advancement in the center, where white practically has an extra pawn in the center. They have more centralized pawn structure. And if they go e4, they will absolutely dominate in the center. And that's exactly actually what happened. Knight to d7, bishop takes e7, rook takes e7. White also played knight g3. That's another useful move. e4 is definitely coming. Black cannot play c5 because knight takes d5, so e4 is absolutely unstoppable. After knight g3, knight f6, queen f2 was played with the idea e4, because after e4, white's d4 pawn may be hanging. So white protects that pawn by playing queen f2, and after bishop e6, white made another move, knight f5, before they went e4. They could have played e4 right now, but they probably tried to stay away from some kind of a c5 idea, so maybe rook d7. So white decided to go knight f5. It's interesting that when you play moves like knight f5 and you delay your main idea e4, you have to make sure that this will be possible. It's not going away from you. And move or 2 or 3 later, you will be able to do this anyway. Bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5, queen b6, and finally e4. D takes e, f takes e, and rook to d8. Now e5 was played, knight d5, knight e4. White achieved position of absolute domination. White is dominating in the center. They have space advantage. They have very dangerous outposts for knight on d6. f7 is potential weakness. I would say white has decisive initiative at this point. Knight f8, knight d6, knight d6, and here after queen c7, bishop to e4, knight e6. White is intending to exchange bishop for knight to have dominating knight against defending knight, but before they do that, they go queen h4. They use this bishop for the last time, attacking h7 square. After g6, bishop takes d5, c takes d, and another strong move, rook c1, and after queen d7, rook c3. You see, this is the very, very instructive way of seeing how you can absolutely maximize activity of your pieces. And you use every one of your pieces to the full extent. So here, rook is on c file, ready to go to h3 or f3, depends on the need, and black is going to be absolutely helpless. I was always talking about domination and coordination. Those are my two most important phrases in piece coordination. Coordination, domination, this is by far, the most important aspect of chess strategy. By far, the number one topic. So, after rook c3, rook f8 was played, and now knight f5, and it's time now to redeem this huge advantage. Of course, taking is not possible because of rook g3 check, followed by queen f6. Knight g7, also queen f6. And in this position, black played rook f8, e8. If this rook goes to e8, then after knight h6, it's a very quick mate. King g7, queen f6 check, and rook h3 mate. And on king h8, it's the same, queen f6 check, knight g7, and now we can go rook h3, rook f3, we can go knight takes f7 with a quick win. So black is totally helpless here. After rook f8 to e8, white didn't bother taking the knight on rook on e7. They played knight h6 check, and on king f6, king f8, queen f6, threatening mate on h8, knight g7, rook c3 f3, and this is beautiful picture how pieces can be absolutely helpless. The threat is queen takes f7 with mate in 2 moves. And black played rook c8 in this position. Now knight takes f7, and we don't need to continue, just rook e6 was played, and after queen g5, black simply resigned. In this game, I want to tell you that white never made absolutely ingenious move. They had very healthy strategy. And although the game was played in 1952 and these strategies were not very well known to general public, today I wouldn't be surprised if I see game on this level played by any regular master or maybe even expert, anyone. The only difficulty was there to stay focused, to be focused with the general idea of playing e4 and improving your pieces, just to be consistent and not get distracted by some other phony threats or some tactics, and not be overconfident that you can win this game in like next few moves. No, it's slightly building up the pressure and converting it to the mating attack. Very impressive game played by Botvinnik. The initiative. Initiative is one of the most important parts of the chess game. Initiative and defense. Initiative is when your pieces are very active and you can perform some coordinated action of these pieces, and frequently it develops into attack. So then when there is an attack, there should be a proper defense. Sometimes you may bet that your attack is much stronger than opponent can provide defense for against. And for that, you may even want to sacrifice some material. This is called positional sacrifice, or for development, I don't know, for space, for whatever. So these positional sacrifices, and sacrifice for initiative in this case, for quick coordination of the pieces that will help us to build attack. So I want to provide one game that I played in the Heraldica International Tournament in 1980. That was c4, c5, knight f3, knight f6. I played against some international master. Knight c3, e6, e3, d5, d4, c takes d, e takes d, and we got with we transferred to the pan of attack of Caro-Kann. And after c takes d, e takes d, bishop b4, c takes d, knight takes d5, and one of the continuations in this position, bishop d2 is one, and queen c2 is the other one. After queen c2, knight c6, bishop d3, and strangely enough, this is a pawn sacrifice. The reason why it played queen c2 is just to delay black's castling, because h7 pawn is hanging. But this move is a pawn sacrifice because black played knight takes c3, pawn takes c3. This is deliberate pawn sacrifice, and it was played before in the game between Najdorf and Portisch. And I did study this pawn sacrifice, and I came to conclusion that white has very good initiative for that. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and you can tell that white cannot take queen or the bishop. If white takes bishop, rook hangs on a1, and taking queen is illegal, so bishop b5 check is the critical move that forces black to move their king, king f8. Now, I want to quickly point to you what was the position white was aiming for. There is no bishop d7 move. Bishop d7 loses instantly, because after bishop takes d7, you can see king cannot take because queen a4 check wins the bishop on b4, and king cannot take because of queen a4 check, and queen cannot take because simply bishop is hanging on b4. So after bishop b5 check, king f8 was played, and white castle. This is the critical position for the pawn sacrifice. Well, actually, white sacrificed 2 pawns, but black did not take the c3 pawn. If queen takes c3, queen to e4 is very, very strong, and it's very difficult, maybe impossible, for black to defend this position. So what happened in after white castled was queen e5 played. Now bishop takes c3 is even worse because white can go bishop a3 followed by rook d1. That will win the game quickly. After queen e5, here c takes b and queen takes b5. Well, of course, taking rook on a1 is suicidal because after bishop b2 the game is over. Queen is lost because on queen takes a2 simply bishop takes g7 wins the queen. So what happened in the game in this position, black played queen takes b5. Well, let's summarize this position. How would we know that this is good position? Now, it's a lot easier to play this position for white than to assess it. Assessing is based, this is not the type of position Russian school talks about something. No, this is what Russian school says at all, anything about this type of position. What can we connect, what kind of a strategy we can connect to this position is this. Couple of things. First of all, when you have an initiative, it's very, very good to have opposite color bishops, as opposed to have them when you have initiative in the end game. So, in the middle game, when you have initiative, it's good to have opposite color bishop. You have to realize that black is going to have very hard time with safeguarding their king. So we have big advantage in development. That's something Russian school says that it's very good. We have opposite color bishop. That's what Russian school says it's very good. So you have to handpick main points of the initiative that you have. And now what you have to do, you have to search for the most aggressive and decisive continuations. Rook to d1, creating very simple and obvious threat, rook d8. Check. Bishop d7. And now we try to break the coordination between bishop and the queen by playing a4, queen c6, and now queen d2. That's a very strong move too, because we're threatening b5 and bishop a3. We're attacking the bishop on d7, and we may be wanting to play bishop b2 and queen g5. Black's position here is totally lost. After queen d2, king e8 was played. And in this position I have several different ways to develop my initiative, but I decided to go queen b2. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it and that's the only way to do it, but queen b2 is good enough. And after f6, b5, and on queen e4, bishop e3. it's almost impossible for black here to connect their rooks and to bring their king to safety. And after bishop e3, b6 was played. Now white, thanks to black queen, white quickly doubles on d file, rook d4, queen b7, and rook a d1. Rook d8 is forced, and now rook d6. Black is completely paralyzed. After rook d6, rook f8, queen d4 was played, e5, queen d3. Black is totally motionless here, and they cannot do anything. King e7, and now next move is also part of the school that I went through. School tells me that to constantly try to improve position of your pieces unless you have some tactical shot and quick win. If you don't see a quick win, try to improve position of your pieces. I could have taken on h7, but I didn't see conclusive decision here. So what I did, I made here very strong move. Actually, I'm proud of this move. And the move is bishop to c1. Now, bishop is coming to a3, which is absolutely devastating for black. And here, black played in desperation, bishop takes b5, pawn takes b5, they gave a piece away, and now it's all practically over. Rook takes d6. I didn't take on d6, I played bishop a3 first, and after bishop a3, a couple of more moves was made. Rook f to d8, bishop takes d6, and after king f7, queen takes h7, black simply resign. They are in very dangerous, they have very dangerous king position, and also they are piece down. Well, I maybe found one or two slightly difficult move in this position, but you remember this, that when you strongly believe in your position, when you believe that everything you did is right, and based on your knowledge and understanding of the game and the basic rules of Russian chess school, your position is overwhelming and very good. Remember, when this happens, your search level is for decisive continuation is a lot higher than it would be if you are not certain in evaluation about your position. You don't know when you have a good position or not. You are not searching as hard. The reason why, because you don't know if there is solution or there is not. But if you believe that everything you did is right, and you have overwhelming position, and you have decisive initiative, you know there should be a winning continuation. And once you believe it, eventually you're going to find it. And if you don't, that's the subject. That means your search and your tactical eye is subject to improve. So now let me discuss one game. It's also what I did here. I played also. The reason why I have so many of my games analyzed here, because they are not the most brilliant games. No, by far not. Because I can easily, I'm a good product, very, very typical product of Russian chess school, and I can explain how that school helped me, how it helped me, and what I based my research on. So this game was played by me I played board one for United States team in Chess Olympiad in 1984 in Greece. I played against another Chinese grandmaster. So knight f3, d5. Well, here let's go in the middle to the middle of the game, and I will explain it to you what I picked up based on Russian chess school and how I put my own search and my own imagination much later in the game, not in the beginning. First, I used those basic principles. Knight f3, d5, g3, c6. We quickly go through the opening, bishop g2, bishop g4, castle, knight d7, d3, e5, e4, d takes e, d takes e. This is very quiet position. Bishop c5, h3, bishop h5, knight bd2, f6, c3, bishop f7, knight h4, knight e7, knight f5, knight takes f5, e takes f. Okay, this is number one. I have very nice outpost for my knight. I have very good bishop, and I have some space advantage on the king side. Maybe I can build an attack. It's still very little yet to win the game. So bishop e7 was played. Purpose of this move to prepare themselves for knight e4. I played knight e4 and knight to c5. Well, it's very powerful knight, and it's obvious that black wants to exchange by playing knight c5. Okay, I don't want to exchange queens here. This because I want to play, because if I exchange queens, I hardly have any advantage. So I have to move the queen. Queen goes to g4 because attacks the g7 pawn and makes castling impossible because of bishop h6 check. My opponent was prepared for this move and went g5. After g5, I played bishop e3, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen c7. Black is trying to castle. Castling kingside seems very dangerous because of white's potential attack on a king side. So they try to castle queenside. Rook fd1 stopped that attempt. Now h5, queen e2. And here, let's talk about position. I can tell that my two bishops are better than my opponent's bishops. My king is better placed, so black still has to safeguard their king. Castling is very dangerous here because of bishop f3, and there is no good way to protect h-pawn, and h4 will dangerously weaken black's king position. On the other hand, black must bring their king to safety. So they play h4, obviously expecting g4, and if they castle, then that would minimize white's advantage. H4 was played, and here I made a very strong move, king g2. That still makes black's castling very, very difficult. If black takes on g3 and they castle, white still has potentially very dangerous attack on the king side. So black decided not to castle, but walk over with the king. King f8, rook d2, rook d8, rook takes d8, bishop takes d8, and rook d1. Well, there is something else I picked up from Russian chess school. We have the open file, but any chess school will tell you that. Even beginner knows that when there is an open file, you have to try to control it. And that's the simple thing that I have to do. That's what I did. After bishop e7, I went queen d3. Now I'm absolutely controlling that d file. Queen b8, I went queen c2, trying to go rook d7, because queen d7, bishop e8, I couldn't make progress that way, so I went queen c2, a6, and now I went bishop b6. Now I'm totally controlling the d file. Queen c8, and now c4. After bishop e8, queen d2. White has big positional advantage, but there is still an issue of h4 pawn and g3 pawn. White does not want to play g4 to free black's rook, and black rook can try to participate in the center. So white keeps the tension with the pawn on g3. After queen d2, hg, f takes g, and king g7. After king g7, g4 was played. Now this position is far from being safe for black, because black's rook still needs to stay on h file because of potential h4 breakthrough, and that's actually what decided the game. So after g4, rook h7, queen a5. This is another very strong move, attempting bishop d8. Bishop d7, preventing bishop d8. Now we go bishop c5. Now we want to exchange dark square bishop to make d6 square accessible for the rook. King f8, bishop takes e7, and rook takes e7. Now rook d6, king f7, queen d2, and queen c7. White is still dominating on d file. They have dominating bishop on e4, and black's pieces are terribly passive. And in this position, h4 turned out to be absolutely devastating and completely winning the game. h4, g takes h, and simple breakthrough g5, and the game is over. So after g5, f takes g was played. There is no good defense, threatening rook takes f6, f takes g, and now f6, and it's all over. Rook is hanging, rook cannot move because bishop is hanging. bishop h3 check was played, king takes h3, queen c8 check, king h2, queen g4 was played, and after bishop g6 check, this is just one of the many moves white can play to win the game, forcing king takes g6, because if king goes back, then is a background mate. King takes g6, then pawn takes rook with the check, and black simply resign. White can make the queen, or they're already up a rook, totally hopeless for black. This is good example of using basic initiative principles with one finesse. That's something you had to do. Remember, I said I did not play g4, did not close the position on the king side. That was actually, some people did say this is a great example of Russian school. It's not absolutely fantastic, no, but it's very consistent, it's very typical. The Russian school of chess is all about learning certain principles, and once you see them and you think already, oh, you know, and you're ready to use it. And this is often very wrong. Everything you do in chess, everything you learn needs to be practiced, needs to be performed by yourself. Only then you know what is this about. Understanding is not enough. You have to do it yourself more than one time. Well, that's why when Russian School of Chess recommends openings to play, that's why they always recommend to play first move e4. And that's for players who wants to learn a lot about the game. Because by playing e4, it's a lot more about coordination of the pieces, active play, tactics, calculations, defense, attack, everything. A lot more than in d4. Majority of very strong players probably play d4 more frequently than e4, but they already went through this school. They already know a lot that you, probably everything you have to learn. So that's why I always recommend e4 and the openings that will help you to realize a lot about what attack is about and how to play it, that will give you a chance to perform it yourself. And believe me, that's exactly the way it is. Well, in order for me to prove it, I have to go to hundreds and hundreds of examples and then only insist that I am right. But I am 100% right, and it's not my opinion. It's been proven, and this is something you have to take my word for. This is something been proven by Russian School of Chess, by 70, 80 years of playing the Russian school dominates practically in the world. And they all, every top player that they went this way achieved results a lot earlier than others, and they had better performance overall. Now, for black, I recommend frequently King's Indian. And the reason I recommend King's Indian, because it's a lot of strategy there, planned attack and everything. That may not be the opening you want to play for the rest of your life. It may not be your main opening weapon for black against d4, but that's by far the opening you learn a lot from. So at first I want to show you what type of positions you try to stay away from. Here is the King's Indian, was played by some master in the simul against Garry Kasparov in 1991. And everything that was done by black most of the things was done by black was wrong. And here is the way it went. In this position, white went e4, d6, knight f3, castle, bishop e2, it's typical King's Indian, knight bd7, we castle, e5, queen c2, c6, rook d1, queen c7, d5. Kasparov is white. Now, here black made first very big mistake. Black played c takes d. That's a big mistake. And anyone who understands deeply King's Indian attack will tell you it's a mistake. And mistake, it's based on the principles, very, very logical and very simple. After c takes d, white clearly has space advantage on the queen side. Black's pieces have big difficulties coordinating and showing any activity on queen side. And that's where black opened position. Wrong. Right move is rook e8. That's trying on dc, bc, on queen d3 to be able to protect the pawn with bishop f8. And maybe much farther in the future, maybe close the center, but by no means to open the c file. cd, cd, knight c5, creating very cheap threat of knight takes e4. White played knight b5, forcing queen e7, and now knight d2. Knight on c5 cannot stand for long. It will be pushed away, and then white will go knight c4. Black has very, very bad position already. And after knight d2, a6, knight c3, b5, white simply played b4. Now black is totally lost. And it's been only 17 moves, and black is totally lost. Because they're supposed to play for f5. Meanwhile, they open the c file. They have no space on queen side, and they are wasted about 3 or 4 tempos. Knight went to b7. Now, knight on b7 is totally out of the game, just as we saw in one of the Potvinnik's games a little earlier on the tape. So, if knight would go to d7, then knight b3 followed by knight a5, white's knight will access c6 square. Black's position will go down the hill very, very quickly. After knight b7, it's not much better. a4, b takes a, rook takes a4, and now a6 pawn is hanging, b5 is threatening, so black went a5, of course out of desperation, and after knight c4, they are losing pawn and losing game. After knight c4, queen c7, knight b5, we can practically stop looking at this game right now. After knight b5, white won the a pawn and won the game very, very quickly. This is bad example to play King's Indian. Now, let me show you why I do say that King's Indian is very important to play for black, because you learn a lot. Let me explain that. When you play King's Indian, there are some rules that you have to follow. So I will draw the pictures of these rules. It doesn't matter what the moves are. Basically, with this pawn structure, black should absolutely stay away from any moves on the queen side. Black has to try for f5. I don't know, knight g4, knight h6, knight e8, or knight h5, but basically you have to go for f5. And this is the only way to play. The way you see, why would I say we have to play on a king side and not queen side? You see the pawn structure c7, d6, e5, points direction c7, d6, e5, coming towards the king side. So this is one of the rules. So you have to play on queen side. You have bishop active, light square, potentially opening f-file, and potentially pushing pawns on a king side. So this is the correct way. Completely different story if center stays open. Then we have to try to put pressure on d4 pawn somehow, what we can. This is just a very, very raw ideas. Now, let me show you one tactical, well, actually strategical maneuver in the kind of a pattern that you can play while you playing King's Indian. Well, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3, castle, and bishop e2. This is by far the most popular position of King's Indian defense. Here is one move I want to show you that is not the best move for black. But I want you to understand the ideas. This is something you may never have done before. So, bishop g4. Why bishop g4? Suppose white castles. You see, black tries, since they have space disadvantage, they want to get some very strong central square. And that square is d4. They go knight d7. You see, they already made two consecutive moves towards that plan. One is bishop g4, trying to weaken d4 square by eliminating defender of d4 square. Second move to open the bishop on d4 square. And now suppose white plays h3. I'm not making the best moves for white, but I'm trying to show you what we're trying to do. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3. And now we go knight c6. Finally, d4 pawn is under attack. If white goes d5, black goes knight d4, and on bishop e3, c5. So this is not a bad position for black. What does black have? Black got rid of the c8 bishop, which would have been blocked on c8, would have been blocked by the knight on d7. There is one very important rule which I outlined on several of my DVDs, saying when you have space disadvantage, and you do have space disadvantage in 90% of King's Indian positions, it's good for you to exchange one or two minor pieces. That's exactly what black has done. Black has dominating very strong position for the knight on d4. If white takes en passant, we have a choice to take with the pawn, but we cannot do it right away because our knight is hanging. And if we want to take with the pawn, we have to take the knight first. And after queen takes f3, black has very nice position. I would say black is better here. So this is a pattern, how you do coordinated attack on the central squares. Actually, this is very, very interesting. The best, bishop g4 is not the most recommended move in this position because the best move, bishop e3, but that's something you have to know. So what we do, I'm just explaining that this is one of the strategical patterns. And strategical pattern, you may use it in some different openings, so eliminating defense and then put pressure on a weak square. So, and after d5, knight d4, you have something to play for. Playing, controlling dark square, having, well, also after d5 in this position, you see that King's Indian bishop is on g7, is very active and on the open diagonal. Those are some of the components of chess strategy. Making your pieces active, that's not the component. The component is how do we put pressure on central square to extend our bishop's activity. So King's Indian, I would recommend, well, if we develop this idea further, I can go to enormous extent, and this idea by itself can make like 2-3 hours, but we're not going to do that. I am showing it to you how it's important to have space advantage on one side and not to be cramped at the same time. So important to get some outpost squares. Now, I want to show you some interesting game. Actually, it had great influence on me, this game. It was played in 1991 between Garry Kasparov and Jan Timman, another very famous grandmaster from Holland. The game was played, it started as a Slav defense. It turned out a lot like King's Indian. d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, e3, g6, knight f3, bishop g7. g6 is one of the continuations. It's not the most popular, but it's one of the possible continuations. And after bishop g7, bishop e2, castles, white castles, e6. I don't like e6 move. I like better bishop g4 move maybe, or bishop f5. I don't like the idea of locking bishop on c8. And here you see white's pawns f2, e3, d4. You see they slightly increase towards the queen side. White has space advantage on the queen side. b4, very well justified, very sound and very logical move. After b4, knight bd7, bishop b2, d takes c, bishop takes c4, b6. Now black wants to play bishop b7 followed by c5 and try to open all their pieces. And it's interesting to see how black was cramped and lost the game practically without any resistance. Very well played by white. a4, bishop b7, bishop a3. Very good move. Has to do a lot with c5 continuation, trying to prevent c5. After bishop e3, a3, rook c8, rook b1, and black takes rook out of f8 square, out of a3 f8 diagonal, queen e2, knight to d5. Knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, and bishop b5. Now you see black never made c5, and now b7 bishop is very passive, and black has already difficult position. Rook e7, a5, rook c7, rook f2 c1. White has very strong initiative on a queen side. Knight b8, a6, and on bishop c8, bishop to d3. Black's knight on b8 and bishop on c8 are simply comical, and black has no counterplay. I would say black is totally lost. After bishop d3, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook c7, and b5. Totally sealing black's terrible pieces on queen side. After b5, rook takes c1, bishop takes c1, queen c7, bishop d2. Now c file is totally useless for black because they can never penetrate to any of the squares. f5, queen e1, knight d7, bishop b4. White move by move squeezing the life out of black's position. Bishop f8, h4, knight f6, knight e5, knight d7, knight f3. They just repeated position once more. I don't know, it may be some time issue. After knight f3, knight f6, and knight e5 again, and after knight d7, white played knight c6. Black took on a6 here, but they are losing by force after this, but it's hard to blame them for taking on a6 because position is totally hopeless. And after bishop takes a6, it's very quick end for black. You can see the possible check continuation. Well, white doesn't want to take the bishop because queen takes knight. And what was done here? White played queen c1, and that instantly won the game, because threat is knight e7 check, and also threat is pawn takes bishop. There is absolutely no defense. On something like queen b7, bishop is hanging, otherwise queen is lost after knight e7. It's a very instructive squeeze in taking advantage of the huge space advantage, and also totally passive black's pieces. Very impressive games. And Kasparov, I should mention, he is one of the brightest representative of our Russian chess school. Well, if I can say that Botvinnik was the father of the school, that means he was inventing, he was doing something that was not known then. And now every strong chess player is equipped with knowledge of the strategical points. So we just saw a lot of examples of representatives of Russian chess school. I explained and showed number of different positions, and I explained number of different aspects of strategy and tactics. Well, what is the conclusion you have to make from all that? Well, you may ask, okay, I understand everything you said, but how should I study chess? Obviously, to give you a clear picture how to study chess from 3 or 4 hour DVDs is not good enough. But I can tell you the methods you have to use. It's very good to have personal instructions. Yeah, but not everyone can get to this point where to have personal instructor. Not everyone can afford. But what you can afford, and you absolutely have to, is to study chess, even if you study by yourself, correctly. So what do? You don't take games of the best players in the world playing against each other. That, I would say, is a wrong way to go, because best players, when they play each other, you will never see in those games something you have to learn. You will see the moves they make. You don't see mistakes you may make. So big mistakes will not be there. You need to see games where are typical for taking advantage of opponents' mistakes. Make sure you don't make those mistakes and have the right opening repertoire. So let me put it in the order you should see those things. First, you should get your opening repertoire. And why? Not because you need to get very good position in the opening. Well, obviously you do need, and it will help a lot, but that's not good enough. You should play openings where you know what your plan is, what you're trying to do, and what your general strategy is. Secondly, you have to look at the games played with these openings by very good players. And it helps a lot. If you see games played with these openings by masters or grandmasters, preferably against weaker players, because that's the way, that's where you will see moves made by their opponents, kind of moves that can be made against you, and how did they take advantage of it. So this will absolutely strengthen your understanding of certain openings. By all means, I recommend for players who don't have solid opening repertoire to play e4. There is a number of moves can be played against e4, and I have openings almost on every response after e4. I have after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. d4 has a lot of strategical ideas, some tactics, and actually I don't play this myself very often now, but I remember how tremendously it helped me understand various aspects of the game while I was improving as a chess player when I was like 16, 1700. That helped me a great deal. So if you need, you can always get DVD with the d4 with the Scotch Gambit. On c5, I will not recommend you, if you are just beginning to get to know different aspects of strategy and tactics, I will not recommend you to get involved with a regular Sicilian. So what I would recommend is the opening, the system that is rich with different positional ideas. You learn a lot from strategy, about strategy, tactics, maneuvering, everything with knight c3. Again, on everything I think is very instructive, I have DVD on, and knight c3 followed by f4 Grand Prix. So that's, well, I had a very simple system that outlines your strategical plan, basics, and what you're playing for. Without having planned, you might as well not play chess at all. You might have just picked some other game, because playing chess without a plan is absolutely senseless. Against c6, against d6, against knight f6. And I am not explaining you on those DVDs with my openings just how to play opening to get good position. No, I'm explaining how you build the plan for whole game, and the games played with it are available in databases. Now, I personally think, and I believe very strongly, and my students made tremendous progress playing these openings. Progress not as far as they won a lot of game. I don't care if they won game or not. I have students that lost a lot of games with these openings, but their understanding of the game is a lot better now. Now, as for black on e4, I do recommend to play c5. The reason, because e5 kind of brings you to a dull game if white plays most popular opening bishop b5, which is Ruy Lopez. And I do recommend to play c5. And again, and on knight f3, g6, accelerated dragon, very many positional ideas and a lot of tactics involved in early stage as well. Now, you picked openings, you made openings, and I would strongly recommend, this is my suggestions, that's not the only openings you should play, that You don't have to play the openings I recommend, but you have to understand very well basic ideas about these openings. And I repeat it again, and I'm willing to repeat it many times over and over and over. You should see games of good players against weaker players, because this is what most likely you will see when you play your own games. And this will absolutely has to improve your chess understandings. Remember, what you don't need to learn some tactics and how to swindle your opponent or have a perfect opening. No. Perfect opening is the one that will give you clear plan for the middle game. And you know tactics around it, you know strategy, and that will help you guide the game to the right direction. Whatever I told you, it's everything very tightly connected with the Russian chess school. That's the school I went through. That's the school I will highly, very, very highly recommend on. And those ideas of this school, that's why they are absolutely dominating in today's on today's chess scene. So if you have any questions, you can address me, find me through chessdvds.com, or you can you can write to me, and I will be very happy to assist you in any way. And if you have any objections, might as well contact me. Actually, most helpful will be if you don't understand something. If you don't understand something, I can I can clarify this for you. And if you don't agree, also, don't hesitate to contact me. So, good luck with the new way of playing chess, unless you're already a good chess player and you use the basic ideas of the Russian chess school. Thank you very, very much.